some days I'm just like, okay, I'm going to be outside for 4 hours and then I'm going to go home and then I'm going to curl up on my couch and I'm going to turn on the switch and I'm going to fall asleep with it on. And that's fine. And like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of adults, like older than me adults, think that like kids, just because they're always on their phones means that like, they're not going to be outdoorsy people, but like you got to teach them balance and like just don't make them do it all the time and then they'll do it on their own. I think when you make going outside a chore, it remains a chore or like a punishment, and I don't think it should be like that.
Hello, everyone. I am your host, Lion, and I believe that we only grow when we are outside our comfort zone. And that opportunity comes through our choice or life circumstances. In this episode, I'm joined by the amazing Sabrina, who is a trained archaeologist and land conservationist. Sabrina is a badass woman who has cut down 100-foot trees, started fires to protect the land, and gone diving in black water environments. I hope this conversation with Sabrina inspires you to take a small step towards deepening your relationship with nature and getting to know yourselves better in the process. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much to our audience for making the time to be here. My name is Farhan, and I am a digital nomad and a global citizen. And we have an amazing guest for you today, who I will introduce momentarily. Before I do, I wanted to just introduce today's theme. There are a few themes which I'm very passionate about exploring on this here series of ours, and one of them is women's empowerment and showcasing strong, independent women who are striking it out in their own right, as part of inspiring not just other women, but inspiring all of us to do more, and to broaden our horizons and to see how amazing, some of these women are. And as part of that, making the conscious choice to step out of our comfort zone to practice our muscles of resilience and creativity. And in today's sort of episode, we're looking to do that as part of developing a deeper relationship with nature so that it allows us to tap into our source, in times when life can get hard, or as part of building, sort of strong resilience. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Sabrina. Sabrina is a badass and a conservationist, naturist, archaeologist, diver. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And
Make me sound way cooler than I feel.
Basically, that's what I have. Sabrina, is there anything that you would like to add before we dive into it?
I guess just cool, apparently cool person extraordinaire. Also, I feel like on top of that, I'm also a burner, which is how we met. So that's fun.
Yes. Tell the audience the story of how we met.
Okay, I don't know who told you to come to me, but we met at Love Burn, which is one of our regional Burning Man events here in Florida. And I don't remember what day this was even, because I think I was like setting up the med tent at one point, living my existence, and probably a little more drunk than I should have been, because I wasn't on shift, so who cares, right? And like you come walking up, you're like, hi, and I'm like, hello, thinking that, I don't know, like you're some injured person, because that's how it goes. You don't come to me just to be friendly and nice. But you introduce yourself, you're like, someone else said to come over and talk to you. And I was like, that sounds wrong. Uh, and I think we've just been like, we like said hi like all the time ever since. Like we like would pass each other like over the course of the burn. We're like, oh, what's up? And we like hug, and then we go our separate ways, which I feel like is the way that burns go. And somewhere I think close to the end of everything, you're like, hey, I want to on a podcast. And I was like, sure, person I met at a burn, you'll remember that. And then you did, which is very surprising. Because usually people who say, oh, we're going to do this, we absolutely don't. And that's okay, you know. Then you followed up. And so here we are, months later.
Yo, for the magic to happen, you gotta follow up.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you so
Uh,
much for that. As we start getting to know a little bit more about you and your nature with relationship, I remember when we were initially having our conversation, um, I appreciated what I will call the three stages of your relationship with nature, right? Um, First stage being when you first moved to Florida, the second, um, but why don't we begin there and tell us a little bit about, that first stage, paint us a picture around, where you came from and what it represented. Um,
yeah,
let's go
totally.
through the stages.
So I'm a Florida native first. I was born in Miami, raised in Sarasota. Uh-oh. Someone says that we're both sideways. Oh no.
Oh,
Sorry, ring the chat. I don't know if that's supposed to help you or not. Um, but anyway, um, when we moved to Sarasota, where I live now, when I was a kid, um, my grandma used to just like roll me outside and be like, "You're just gonna be here. This is where you live now." Um, and so I had a little bit of that, learning about how like caterpillars worked and like all that stuff. And I was like, I remember like a little. My grandma, like, yeah, she would just roll me outside and like we'd take like really long walks and um
mm,
over the course of like a lot of like my early childhood, like you get like a lot of like nature time, which was pretty cool of my grandma. Um, yeah, my grandma rules also just in general. Um, and then there was I feel like a point in time where like I didn't do a lot of outdoorsy stuff. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a gamer. Yeah. So no, I played a lot of video games in my those like growing up years, and so like
mm,
while I wasn't outside as often as like I had been as a kid, which I feel like is kind of par for the course, right? Um, and then as I was nearing the end of high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to go be a historian. And then I thought about being inside forever because that's what I thought historians did. They don't. They're not just inside all the time forever. But I chose to go to school for archaeology because I'm like, that's history, but outside. Who
mm,
wouldn't like that? And so I pretty much have just been outside ever since.
mm,
Went to school for archaeology. You're outdoors for, a very long time. And then I served for 2 years with AmeriCorps, with our state conservation corps. And I was outside for like what 3,400 hours of time, and I now get to teach kids about nature outside sometimes, and that is also fantastic. So I'm just
Hell
outside
yeah.
time now, and even if I'm not outside, like I have a bunch of plants. I'm not going to turn the camera because that's going to be work.
Mm,
But like there's just plants all over my house. So even if I'm not outside, I'm kind of outside a little bit.
mm-hmm. And so the way I understand it is, in the very early stage of your life, you had your grandma and your mom to thank you for taking you into nature walks, taking you to the beach quite often. And obviously, living in Florida, you're lucky to sort of have that very accessible as opposed to New York City, which is where lived for some time before moving back to Florida. Um, but tell us more about sort of, the stage in your life when you started to develop a more independent relationship with nature, um, and sort of some of the memories around that.
There comes a point I feel like in the life of a local Floridian where you don't have to go outside with your family anymore. Like if you're going to like the beach, like you can just do it yourself. I think there came a point where like my mom, like was working and I didn't have anything better to do. And so I would start going to the beach by myself, which is like very
Hmm.
different from going to the beach as a kid, where everything like your
Yeah.
mom's watching you and like when you're out there just with your friends, it's a different feeling. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I went from this like kid who was like very reliant on like, my family to go to the beach or go outside or do whatever to like being like a in between kid who if I wasn't inside playing video games or reading manga or watching anime, I was out, just out and about doing, I don't know, beach kid stuff. I don't even remember what I did. I was just there. And your friends would be like, oh, we're going to go to the beach. Let's just go. And I don't know. I guess it's what I feel is quintessentially like, I don't know, like my experience. Like that was just, what we all did at the time, you know?
Hmm.
I don't think we really
Yeah.
thought anything about it. Like I didn't know anything about plants. I'm not there to be. I wasn't a plant kid. I was a book kid. So coming into being a plant person has been fun, but very very different from what I was like when I was a youngster. Just splashing around and being like, "Is that a jellyfish?" I don't know. Um, yeah,
And one thing that's very interesting that I didn't realize earlier is as a gamer, as somebody who's really into anime, manga, and the stereotype is that, people who are gamers don't tend to be ones who enjoy spending a lot of time outdoors. And you're like a beautiful anomaly in that, you enjoy all these things, yet, you are really steeped in the outdoors and you've made a career out of it, right?
yeah. Like I kind of screech balance, right? Because some days, honestly, like I'm looking outside now. I'm gonna go outside later. I don't always want to go. Sometimes I'm like, I could sit on my couch and just turn on the Xbox and then it can be 9 p.m. when I look up again. But I think that like you can't do that all the time. Just like you kind of can't be outside all the time. Eventually, like I don't know, it gets for me at least it gets taxing. Where like I'm like I love the outdoors. Like just don't get me wrong, but some days I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna be outside for 4 hours and then I'm gonna go home and then I'm gonna curl up on my couch and I'm gonna turn on the switch and I'm gonna fall asleep with it on. And that's fine. And like I don't know, I feel like a lot of adults, like older than me adults, think that like kids just because they're always on their phones means that like they're not going to be outdoorsy people. But like you got to teach them balance and like just don't make them do it all the time, and then they'll do it on their own. I think when you make going outside a chore, it remains a chore or like a punishment, and I don't think it should be like that.
Yeah. So on the topic of parenting, um, let's talk about your current career, and your role as an educator. So give us the background on that, please.
Yeah, so I work for a regional land trust here in Southwest Florida. Yes, that's where we are. Jeez. And that essentially means that I get to teach kids about nature. I run youth education programs in a couple of the Southwest Florida counties, which means I get to sometimes be a person who's like, you're going outside and I don't care how you feel. But most of the time, I'm taking an inordinate amount of time to foster relationships with kids. So that again, going outside doesn't become a chore. It's just something that, Miss Sabrina stopped by and then we're gonna go outside and that's fine. Or sometimes like we'll have food outside and they're like, oh, this isn't awful. And I'm like, yes, it's not awful. And that eventually morphs into us going on hikes and doing all this stuff, and it's very fun. Um, I do enjoy just showing kids like the cool public lands that are available to them. And I mean available to them. Like it's for them, and I like that a lot. I love the experience of being like, hey, you can just hold that bug. You got to put it back. Like don't crush it, but you can hold it. It's fine. Or being like, hey, look at that bird. That's a cool bird. And they're like, yeah, it is a cool bird. And I'm like, uh, yeah.
And what would you say is some of the more passionate aspects of why you do this work, right? And what gives you the fuel to keep going through the tough points?
So I joke sometimes to my friends that I'm really petty, because there aren't, at least for me, my experience has been so that I'm usually the only like black person in spaces. And I surprisingly don't like that. I don't love it. It's really cool when I get to go to like national conferences and there are like black people everywhere and we're all like, oh my God. And that's very cool. But locally, that's not always how it works. So I, when I got this job, I was very honest about me being like, hey, like I really want to make sure that the natural spaces that like we work hard to save are equitably accessed for everybody. And so yeah, sometimes things get hard. Like sometimes kids are acting up and they're having like a rough go at it, and you have
Yeah,
to be kind of patient with them because like teenagers are mean. They're just mean. It's fine. And sometimes they have bad days, and they're not always equipped with the emotional toolbox to be able to reach out and be like, hey, like this is how I'm feeling today because of this.
yeah,
Um, and sometimes that gets really hard. And like sometimes the way the world is right now makes things kind of overwhelming. But I think most days when I wake up, I haven't had the day off today. But most days when I wake up being like, all right, no, it's fine. Because if I don't, I'm not convinced anyone else will come into contact with these kids and like foster that relationship with nature and in the
yeah,
way that I think that I'm like almost like uniquely equipped to do so.
yeah,
Um, Someone put it really nicely to me once is like it's important that kids see people that look like them doing things that they didn't think was possible. And I'm like, listen, we can go to the beach, we can go anywhere you want to go outside. And seeing like an adult being able to say that who's like has like natural hair and happens to be black, like that's a really big thing for some folks. So um, that's usually why I get up, other than to like go outside. I do just like being on the land, but
yeah.
giving them that connection, I think, is very important.
And from what I understand, you also work with kids who have special needs, right?
Yeah.
And what has been some of your experience and challenges and learnings as part of gauging, teaching, interacting with kids who are differently abled?
So I had to unlearn real fast a lot of like even my own internalized ableism, right? Because I come from a family of people with different abilities, and I thought that I was on the up and up. And I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great," and I think I underestimated um, a lot of my kids off the bat, and that was something that I had to learn uh, pretty much immediately. Also, are you reading chat?
Yeah,
No. Okay, making sure.
yeah,
Anyway, I definitely had to learn to be say like no, they can't do this. It's just like gauging it with them instead of gauging it on my own, which that I feel like is a really important point. Is that in any kind of liberation of any kind, it's really down to talking to the people who are the focus, right? In order to know whether or not something can or should be done. So I've done a lot of listening. I asked a lot of questions. And I've also gotten to like watch kids from far away and be like, okay, well, um, how fast or slow can you do something? Like you can do it. And I want to make sure that like you're doing it safely. But again, like giving like the kids the agency to pick and choose our routes on hikes sometimes or like where they want to go. Um, it has been also been kind of cool. I do greatly enjoy giving kids agency and then also learning from my end um, how to do away with parts of my own like in sense again ableism. Like I just didn't understand, and it made me not understand them, and I wanted to do better. So I have been doing better, which has been very um, actually honestly very liberating for me. But also it's been great to also help kids. Yeah.
yeah. And especially as a person of color who's helping other kids, especially kids who are people of color, I know that, I am not somebody who grew up in nature, right? As an immigrant, I was a city boy, and really my relationship with nature started after I came to America. and being in the right circles where I was exposed to it. And then as I got older, going, sort of hiking in Colorado or the Grand Tetons in Wyoming, seeing that there weren't a lot of people of color on those hikes, especially when you get out into the wilderness, it was something that I noticed, right?
Yeah.
And I think it speaks volumes to the value of the work that you are doing to address um, that inequity which currently exists, which at the end of the day is a source of liberation, right? Because ultimately, we are spiritual beings, uh, and we have a higher level of consciousness, right? That taps into the universe, which is a lot easier to feel and be wowed and to forget our worldly troubles when we are one with nature. And there's so many kids and people who are unable to tap into that, especially being people of color. And which is why I think, the work that you're doing is so commendable because it's giving more of us access to be able to be at peace and seek tranquility with our state of being.
Honestly, like even from like a practical or scientific standpoint, like there's so much science that says physiologically, uh, you know, like the more you're outside, the better you feel in general. And I think that there's like a general like misunderstanding that if we're going outside, we have to be quiet and peaceful. And like, yeah, a lot of times that does happen, but I also think that sometimes you just want to get rowdy and play around in nature. Sometimes you just want to get gross and go outdoors. Like that's okay too. And I think that oftentimes any kids at this point, but especially kids of color, are told what to do a lot, like what to do and what not to do in their like everyday normal school lives, right? And like they go home and like they have their rules at home. And I think that um, being able to, in a way, be free to just go putz around outside um, in any ways that are meaningful,
Hmm.
whether that be chilling out and just vibing under a tree, or like I don't know, playing stick swords with your friends because you're seven.
Yeah,
That I think those both of those are valid, and I think that um, I think it's just important that like not only like what like I'm doing, like but also there are so many other organizations that are out there. Um, God, Latino Outdoors is great. Outdoor Afro is also great for saying, we don't see us outside. Let's change that together. I like
yeah,
that a lot. And they're fantastic organizations. If I wanted to plug anything else, our local Outdoor Afro, I was out with them last weekend, and they blew my mind. I don't get to see a bunch of Black people outside at one time, and they're all like
hmm,
pounding around and like looking at stuff, and I felt at home, and that was yeah, that was a lot emotionally, but also just a lot of fun because sometimes it's just fun, right? It's just go outside and have fun. That's okay too, as long as you don't hurt anybody and you don't hurt yourself. What's the
yeah.
harm?
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. With that, let's segue into your repertoire of outdoorsy things that you have done because you've done quite a bit. Uh, so why don't you share some of that with us?
And now I feel like I'm bragging. Okay.
Yo, you
Um,
ain't bragging if I'm asking.
gosh. Okay. So when I was in college, got my scuba certification because half of my field school was a maritime field school. So I spent 5 weeks digging holes in North Florida. The holes is very reductive. We were digging up two sites stacked on top of each other. Very fascinating stuff. Um, and I spent 4 weeks. Well, technically five, but I was sick for the last one. I had an ear infection. You can't dive with an ear infection, or else it pops them in, and you
Hmm.
can't dive anymore. The whole thing. Um, diving on some shipwrecks out in Pensacola Bay and also up the Blackwater River, which are in North Florida. Um, and I kind of rolled into getting my scuba certification. I didn't mean to. I kind of
Tell us
fell
that
into it.
story.
So I was in my major organization in college because I still feel like I'm bragging. And one of our jobs was to link with the scuba club, who usually like we work together to get our scuba certifications because scuba club isn't just for people who do marine science, right?
Mm-hmm.
UWF, Go Argonauts, is the is like it just has a really great maritime archaeology program, and so most archaeologists are going for that. At least they were when I was there. There are a lot of I don't know water nerds. So I was like, I'd set it all up. I felt really confident. I was like, oh, like this is going to be the week that you do your scuba certifications, and someone's like, hey, are you going to do it too? And I was like, no. So, and I felt confident in that no. I was like, I don't need to, go and dive or anything. That's fine. I'm gonna dig my holes on land where I belong. Um, and someone was like, no, Sabrina, you have to. And I was like, I really don't think I do have to, if I'm honest with you. Um, and I got conned into it. I just whatever. And at the time, I was still like chemically straightening my hair pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that maybe going in and out of chlorinated and then salt water for an extended period of time wouldn't be good for that. And I went home for spring break and I made a decision. I was like, hey, mom, I need you to just cut all of my hair off. And she was like, I'm good. What? And I was like, yeah, just trust me. And I've had my hair, give or take, like this ever since. Uh, Going natural was the big chop was very scary for me. I wasn't used to having short hair, hair that short rather. I used to have like a pixie cut kind of, and so I just cut it all off, and I've been rolling with that ever since, which is wild. So suffice to say, I spent a week getting my scuba certification. I've been doing. I don't think I've been on a dive for a good couple of years now, um, but the my maritime field school was probably one of the like closest I felt to like the history that we're doing stuff with um,
Mm-hmm.
during while I was in school. Like there's no feeling that's quite like being like, ah, yes, I'm touching the hull of a ship that sank in 1559.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. That's not that doesn't seem real. Um, so yeah, I cut off all my hair and decided to start diving because someone else said I should, and I couldn't say no because I felt real bad. So that was, gosh, archaeology school was fun. Um, After that,
Mm-hmm.
I after I graduated, I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to do cultural resource management
Mm-hmm.
like some of my other friends did, which was essentially like shovel bumming and digging holes all over the place for I don't know publicists to go. I don't fully understand what she was doing. Um, so I served an AmeriCorps term because someone from archaeology school had said, "Oh, Sabrina, this would be great for you," and I didn't trust him. And again, I said, "Absolutely not," because he was the same person that during my certification dives said,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, if you just let the water take you onto the beach, you don't gotta swim so much easier." That's wrong. Having the tank on your back means you're suddenly very heavy when you try to stand up. And
Mm-hmm.
so he and I were both laying there like beached whales. And he was laughing and I was not. That's fine. So when he said, "Oh yeah, Sabrina, you should do AmeriCorps," I was like, "I trusted you once. I'm not doing that again. Absolutely not." Um, and then I had no other options, so I did it anyway. Um, and my 2 years in AmeriCorps were the beginning of uh, what now I feel like is like the rolling into a career in
Mm-hmm.
environmental ed. Like I did invasive exotic plant removal for a year with a little bit of prescribed fire on the side. So I have um, fire experience, which is wild. It was scary the first time, and it was really cool every time after that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so seeing the like renewal of the land through fire is something that's um, fascinating, honestly. And as a Floridian who didn't know that beforehand, I was like,
Mm,
why are you setting it on fire? And having to learn the whole thing about our local fire ecology and how
mm,
fire Florida has in parts, has a relatively quick fire interval, so we have to burn relatively often.
mm-hmm.
Um, was fascinating to learn, and then interesting to be a part of. It feels good to be a part of something that you know is good for the environment.
And if I'm
Um,
not mistaken, archery as well, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. So after I got the job that I'm currently at, um,
Mm,
I got a series of certifications, like a kayak instructor cert, pretty much off the bat, and then a couple years ago, an archery instructor certification. That, in fact,
mm,
I'm doing my re-up course this month. So it's been a couple of years now, which is cool. Um, because like you try to encompass all the outdoor activities you think people would want to do, or you think that would be like cool for people to learn, right? So like teaching kids that you don't just have to walk around and look at bugs, which is what I prefer to do, but to each their own, I guess. You can do archery. You can learn about that. And some of those kids are really good, way better than me. That's unfair. But they're like little Katniss Everdeens everywhere. It's very cute. Uh, teach them how to be safe on a range because archery range is a range, right? And how to be safe with your friends. Um, but again, it's like a confidence booster when you hit the bullseye, and it's good. You love that, and I love to see that. Um, Gosh, what else do I do? What else do I got?
Cutting down very tall trees.
AmeriCorps. Yeah, I cut down my first tree in AmeriCorps. The only trees I've cut down were in AmeriCorps. I don't think that I would do that now. But I can imagine, like me and my AmeriCorps partner, we went out, I don't know, into the field, and the ranger was like, "Oh, we're gonna cut down trees today," and I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And like you would think that like we would cut down like short trees, like like little magnolias. No, he was like, "We're gonna cut down some slash pine because we got to clear it for birds." And I was like, I don't, I don't think that's a thing that we should do. And just as nice, he put on the trap, showed us how to make the cuts in, and was like, "All right, who's next?" And
Mm,
volunteered. And I wish I still had that photo. It was just like I was very small in the photo, and I was smiling so
mm,
bright. It was very funny. Because like it was a big tree and it like swayed a little bit, and I was terrified like a good third of the time. Um,
mm.
and when it came down, I was like, man, we have a lot of power to do stuff, huh? Like we as humans have a lot of power. Um, and that's something I think to remember how much power we have, but also like to do good with that, because I don't think that
Mm.
like you should just cut down trees with me. But when you have it with ecology in mind, I think that's okay, I guess. I still feel
To
bad. I
exercise
feel
that
hurt.
power.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I mean, I remember you telling me the story, and to possess the ability to cut down something that is 100 feet tall, where you are, 5 foot something, right? That speaks to the power.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
chainsaws are cool. Just mechanically, they're neat. If you wanted to know. Uh, yeah, I spent a lot of time when I would like get stressed out, just like sharpening like the chains and I don't know, getting gas together and stuff like that. So it's
Hell
fun.
yeah.
It was a good time.
Um, Now, one thing that, I think is really interesting is that your relationship with nature and how it sort of impacts your daily life, right? And I think, one of the things that had come up in our conversation earlier is just sort of um, fear and how we deal with fear as humans, and how in your case your experience with nature kind of helped you with that, right? And so as part of it, we have a few examples. I think the one that's sticking out to me right now is your first prescribed burn. Before we get into it, I just want to I just want to, for the audience, if you could give some background on, what is a prescribed burn, how controlled is it, and then talk us through sort of what happened and what you learned from it that you are able to tap into in your everyday life, right? And the struggles.
Yeah. Yeah. So real quick, and I'm not going to get super into the science, I suppose, but prescribed fire essentially is, let's go back a long time ago and still today. A lot of natural areas greatly benefit from fire. The cutting back of underbrush and the burning off of what we call duff. So it's like that like layer. Sometimes if you go outside like into like a forest and you step down, you could like put those in. Like all of that vegetate, like old dead vegetation and stuff like that. Um, there is a ecological benefit for that being burnt back. And a lot of our ecosystems down this way are reliant on them being set on fire, whether naturally or not, every 3 to 7 years, give or take, reductively. Um, so instead of waiting for a lightning strike or I don't know car exhaust or I don't whatever to start a wildfire, which is less than optimal and usually burns really hot and high, and results in a lot of trees like dying and a lot of like wildlife dying, which isn't really great for your ecosystem if it hasn't been burnt recently. What a lot of land managers do instead, they will do what's called a prescribed fire. And we've been doing this in Florida for a very, very long time, like indigenous long time. And so essentially it's taking an area, right, that would burn naturally anyway, and using a lot of science and a lot of indicators for how a fire would react to burning through an area, burn it in a way that's sound for it ecologically with like conservation goals in mind, while also making it safe so that it's, doesn't burn people's houses down because apparently they don't like that when their houses burn down. So essentially, much like you get prescribed a medication, the prescribed fire is, we used to call them controlled burns. I think a lot of people have been getting away from that because you can't control fire. You can understand how it works and utilize that to your advantage. But that doesn't always mean it'll do whatever you want. Um, Usually does, but not always. So it's not as controlled, I think, as like we humans are wont to think. Sometimes things change in the natural setting in ways that we don't predict. Um, so it's prescribed essentially in that like we know what this should do, and we're doing it with very high levels of certainty. But there's always like the off chance that things are different, and things burn a little bit differently. So that's
Mhm.
the overall of prescribed fires. The Florida Park Service is really good at keeping their lands burnt on good intervals. I'm proud of that. Go Florida, we did it. Um, so in order to do that, you have to go through a class. It's a wildlands firefighting class, essentially, and there are a bunch of those. And when I started my American return, it was like one of the first things we did. So I felt so confident going into it because like I was pretty fit at the time, less fit now, but so like we went into it and just walking through this like thick muscadine like oaky piney thicket. And it was just hot already, and like we were like setting in like essentially like little spot fires that then would keep it from burning hot or high for very long. The idea is to keep temperatures relatively low while still burning it, so there's less likelihood of it escaping or doing something weird. Um, so you go in while the fire is burning, like in to again like kind of like not let it build up because if you keep letting it build up, it gets hotter, right? So you want it to like maintain a decent clip while maintaining a decent temperature throughout. And I was not prepared for having a bunch of gear on. Well, not even that much gear, but like more gear than I was used to. And then things are on fire, and then you're also setting things on fire, and you can't really stop because you're setting things on fire behind you. And I got so heated at one point, and like the guy who was with me was like, "Don't stop walking, like don't stop." And he was stressing me out, and I was stressing me out. And by the time we popped out on the other side, like of like a fire break, I was donezo. I was so tired. It had been like 10 minutes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was overheating. I was about to cry. Like, I got real teary, and they're like, just get in the truck, Sabrina. It's fine. Um, because for a moment, I was like, what if I trip and fall? Like, what if I don't know, hurt myself? Or like, what if I don't walk fast enough? Like, all these things were happening in my younger girl brain, and I just had a bad go. And I was exhausted, and I was like really like down on myself. I was like, dang. And then the next fire we did, everything was fine. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, this is fine. Like I can just do this. That's okay. Um, so, you know, not a you learn, I think, to be less afraid of
Yeah,
things, and like you go through the experiences now, you know to do better next time.
yeah,
Um, and so I kind of go into everything like that, where I'm like, okay, I gotta, I know what I need to know and learn what I don't know, so I can do better next time.
yeah,
So just less afraid of most things,
yeah,
because like all I have to do is figure out like how not to die, and then it's usually fine, right? But there aren't too many things that are much scarier right now than um, big fires or big water. So
hmm.
you know, uh,
And like that sentiment of sort of having that moment of fear, realizing, in retrospect that it wasn't that big of a deal, and how when you overcome it and it's part seared in your memory, that when life, professional life, relationship life throws um, barriers at you, that it's something that you can sort of, if you remember, refer back to and put things into perspective.
yeah.
I think there's another valuable story that I would love for you to sort of get into,
Is it
which
the
is
river one?
the, huh?
Is it the river one?
Blackwater.
Yeah.
Blackwater. Yeah,
More nature.
and before you get into it, I think one of the things that you said, that really resonated with me is how some of these things happen because you were going into the situation kind of cocky and you were humbled. So speak a little bit about that, because I think the audience could really benefit from hearing that.
So, for a nature fact to start, Blackwater river systems and any kind of water, freshwater, black water system, are dark on purpose. Just for it's not like water's not clean. It's just that it happens to be dark. Um, so during my field school, I learned very quickly that I am a decent diver. I was 20 something. I don't panic underwater easily. I keep my breathing pretty like calm the whole time, and so I don't do a lot of air consumption. And I'm really good at keeping with a buddy. And I had a buddy like most of the time that like we got along super well. So for one of the 5 weeks we were on the water, we go up this river. To a different site than the one we're working on the rest of the time, because there are a couple like old tugboats from like the 20s, I think it was,
Mhm.
that like were out, that broke their moors and sank. It's a whole thing. But on days when the visibility is bad, you still want to get your dive hours in. So our supervisors were like, "Oh, well, we'll just go check out a different shipwreck. Like it's fine." So we go up the Blackwater River, not to be confused with Blackwater rivers in general. In the Blackwater River is a Blackwater River. Um, we just name stuff sometimes. Anyway, so we went up to like the shipwreck, and we have like the give or take GPS location of it. So usually what you would do is you do like um, gosh, what is it called? I don't remember what it's called anymore. Yeah, my brain completely just let it out, what we would call it. But essentially, one person stays in one spot, like connected essentially to like an anchor or the ground, and there would be another person who would move around them in a circle, like tapping. circle search. There it is. Jeez. Going out around in a circle to search for something. Usually be like, if it's dark, you're tapping on the ground to look for, feel for something different. And then if you get all the way around and you don't feel anything, the person in the middle pulls and lets them out a little bit farther. So um, it's kind of like sonar, but slow and bad. So um, so the supervisor were like, hey, like we need two people to just go do the circle search real quick. And like me and this dude were like super confident. We're like, listen, we have been crushing it in water that we can see through. How bad could it be? They're like, hey, do you want your dive light? And I was like, no, I'm an adult. Which is immediately. So we get in the water, and you know how light filters, right? So the lower you get, the darker it is. And in Blackwater rivers, the light seems to just disappear immediately, way sooner than you want. So like we get in the water, and like he and I are next to each other, like maybe like 4 feet apart, so not that far, right? And we're getting down, we're getting down, we're getting down. And it goes from, oh, things are a little bit red to, oh, things are getting a little bit dark to like 4 or 5 feet in, you can't see anything. And, like I couldn't see my hand. And I was like, I can't see anyone around me. I don't like that. And I was like, I've made a horrible mistake. And so I surface, my buddy's also there like, we've made a horrible mistake. One, I get my dive light because they're like, you should have taken it with you. I don't know why you're like that. And I was like, that's fair. And we get like our measuring tape, and we both hold, like he holds like the moving end and I'm on like the stationary end. And I sit, and we get down there, and again, it gets dark immediately. It gets dark so quick. And so like I'm listening to him essentially tap around in the water around me because that's what I can hear. And I can't see anything except like when I turn on the light, I can see like this far. And I'm like, oh, good. And so sometimes there was like a supervisor who'd swim between us because he could see. I don't know how he did this, by the way. But he like either had like a tether to or could see the line between us. So sometimes like I'd just be sitting there, contemplating my death or whatever. And he would just appear out of the water to ask if I was okay. And I don't, I was so scared the whole time. I think we both learned, we're like, listen, we can't be that cocky ever again. Like I can't go into stuff like confident anymore. If the water's that dark, I'm like, how bad could it be? It's just black water. Like I know it's gonna be dark, so it's fine. Um, but back then I was humbled in a way that I was mm-mm. And now, like when teaching kids about Blackwater River, I can tell these stories, and the kids think it's very funny, but also absolutely terrifying, and they're not wrong.
Mm.
Um, but it's just, it's one of those things where you're like, I mean, it can't be much scarier than that.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be, right? And there are times when it is. But you build on these very terrifying experiences outside, and you suddenly have instead of feeling like you can overpower nature, you know that like there are limits. There are things you can't
Mm.
do. Um, and that's okay. You gotta be okay with that.
Yeah.
Nature is teaching lessons, and one of them is be humble, because water gets dark. And don't be cocky because you never know what's down there. You never
Mm.
know what's out anywhere. And so going into it, um, overly confident is a bad way to go.
What an amazing life lesson. Be humble, be wary, and you'll be better off. And I remember when before you went into the story, one of the things that you said was having had this experience, it's kind of like a memory that you come to when you're having tough moments in life where you tell yourself, well, it's not as bad as the Blackwater, right? Dive.
Yeah,
Even though the Blackwater dive, in retrospect, in grand scheme of things, wasn't that bad. It's just that, you weren't prepared or you thought you had this like idea of what it was going to be. But ultimately, it wasn't that bad either. But
no.
it's really,
In,
yeah,
in retrospect, yeah, I was just sitting at the bottom of a river. Big whoop.
yeah.
But not being prepared to sit at the bottom of a very dark river, and not having experienced that before after being confident in diving in very different water. Um, yeah, I mean, like earlier that week, I feel like I had like run into like my first like very close sheep's head, and sheep's head they're just fish, but they have like these like overbites, and they're real nice and they're real curious. They just want to see what's going on.
Hmm.
So like when like I feel like I should have known, like in retrospect, I'm like I got scared by a fish like 3 days before. What was I doing? What was I thinking? When a supervisor says, "Hey, do you want to bring a light with you?" I should have been like, "That man knows more about the water than I do. I should just do whatever he says." But I was like, so what does he know? He knows a lot. He knew a lot. Um, so it's all about I think being prepared, being open to hearing what other people's experiences in the same situations, and then like, sure, you might still make the wrong decision and not bring the light, but
Yeah.
you learn from it.
Yeah, you live and you learn, right?
Yeah, just make sure you live when you learn. You know,
Yeah.
it's the small of it.
Well, I think that this is a great moment to sort of bring our chat to a conclusion. Is there anything that you would like to add, Sabrina, for our audience before we conclude based on our conversation today?
I think based on our conversation, I was going to say a bunch of stuff that had nothing to do with it, but um, I think something that's left out of a lot of conversations about land conservation and like teaching kids about it is teaching where all that land comes from. Controversial take, hardly. I I think honoring um, the space, literal space, but also the conversational space of Indigenous Americans as someone who comes from a family that stolen from another place, right? I think it's
Yeah.
important to be on the forefront. I think teaching kids about the land that we're standing on in a holistic sense is very important. Um, on like a very serious note instead of the giggly notes that I'm usually on.
Yeah.
Um, I think that that's also very important and something that's often overlooked, and I don't talk about it enough. Um, but I think that the more you teach kids about the things that have happened, I think the better off they're going to be. Um, and so mixing um, as much, just mixing whatever knowledge you can give kids, I think is paramount. And I want to be right. And I want to be factual. um, because they're originally, and I guess this is a good way to segue out, but when I was in school for archaeology, I wanted to do public archaeology because I think it's important that when talking to people about things that may feel really far away, or may seem like they don't have anything to do with our everyday lives. Like sometimes I feel like parks don't seem like an everyday life kind of thing, and neither does our history, right? Um, I think that um, being able to share like the physical content, like actual tangible things that then somehow, in a way, communicate the experiences of those before us is very poignant and I think very powerful. Um, and so I'm a big advocate of um, giving kids and like facilitating those experiences and facilitating that like connection with the outdoors as something that's I think an important legacy and an important aspect I think of growing up. I don't want that to be lost. As an
Yeah.
archaeologist and as a environmentalist, I think that um, saving land is good, um, and saving the history of the land and the truths of the land with it is better.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sabrina, for making the time to have this
Yeah.
conversation with us today, to enlightening us to all these aspects that we don't necessarily get to talk about, encounter on a daily basis, but that really form the foundation of the way in which we're able to exist. And thank you so much to our audience for making the time to join us. I hope that based on today's conversation, that not only do you feel more inspired to set an intention to spend more time in nature, but that when you do, that your relationship with nature, be it on land or water or in the air, is forever changed as a result of this conversation, and that much richer. And with that, I look forward to seeing you again on our next episode. Yeah, love and light, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Touch some grass. Touch it. It's fine.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone series. I hope it moved you and inspired you if you are feeling stuck with something in your life. If you would like to further connect with our guest, please see their contact in the description. Please consider taking a moment to rate this podcast. Please also consider showing us some love on your Instagram story. You can find our info in the episode description. Until the next episode, I wish you infinite love and light. Thank you so much for tuning in.